Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe so you won't miss any of our inspiring content. Here is episode 140.
We're letting organized crime run our lives and operate Congress by 19th century, archaic, easily hidden, easily corrupted procedures. It's ludicrous.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is David Zuniga. David Zuniga grew up on a ranch near Laredo, Texas. Besides raising cattle and doing real estate development, David was an architectural engineer for about 30 years, designing commercial and institutional buildings. He founded 4 classical Christian schools in Iowa, North Carolina, and Texas. In 2010, he wrote the book, The Bloodless Liberty, describing his vision for AmericaAgain, which is a new way of life for self-governing Americans. And his new book, Fear the People, is the workbook and action manual being used in AmericaAgain. There are also meetups being launched all over America today. Well, welcome, David.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for having me on.
We were talking about before I started recording that, we just had Chris Ann Hall who talked about Constitution, being able to educate ourselves more on the Constitution. And I'm excited to have you on to show us, after we've been educated, how we can get that government that is aligned in the Constitution back in our services. So why don't you go ahead, though, and tell our audience maybe a little bit more about yourself and how you feel like your paradigm changed to lead you to start AmericaAgain.
Okay. And what I hope to do today is, I really do hope, Rebecca, that this is the best news your audience has heard in a long time. I'm going to talk to you about how 0.5% of America can end this hijacking of our constitutional republic. Nobody else talks about this, I promise you.
This will be a Light Your Mind on Fire podcast for sure.
I hope so. I'm a Christian homeschooling father and grandfather. I'm the founder of AmericaAgain, and AmericaAgain is a charitable, perpetual trust and member organization. And our mission is to recruit, train, support, and organize the willing few, the remnant of the American people that want to enforce the Constitution and to finally live out what we hear in theory all the time from these constitutional teachers, to live this out as popular sovereignty. So that's what we're going to talk about today. In other words, how do we live as self-governing sovereigns over our public servants? People want to say, they always want to think, how can we improve our government? Well, we have to be our government. So we're going to talk about that today. So our website is AmericaAgain.net. And on there, you'll find, right on the homepage, you'll find a 3-minute video. Start with that one. And then you can go to the 12-minute video, and that goes into what we're actually going to do this year and next. It's an action plan video. And then there's a 1-hour movie, AmericaAgain, the movie. And that one's really important, especially for homeschoolers that want to really dig a lot deeper than the schools do, even private schools. Watch that movie. You're going to learn a lot of things, and you can take a lot of those ideas and run with them that schools are not teaching, what you will see in that 1-hour movie. Then at the bottom of the homepage at AmericaAgain.net, there's a blue button on the right-hand side. It says PDF book. Click on that, and you can download my new book, Fear the People. If you read just chapter 1, I wrote the book so that chapter 1 is like an executive summary. It's a summary of the book. So it's only 14 pages, and you finish those 14 pages, you'll have more hope for America's future than you've had in a long time, especially if you're a grandparent. Okay, also on the homepage at AmericaAgain.net, there's a big round red button. It says Take Action. Push that button, and you'll see our plan of action for this year and next year. And on there also, There's calling instructions for our Sunday night national conference calls. We have every Sunday at 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Mountain. We have a national conference call. Anybody can call in, ask questions, give ideas, just brainstorm with us. And I give a short spiel every time introducing things. So let's see, you wanted a quick bio sketch. And the reason I want to give this bio sketch is not because I like to hear about what I've done or where I'm from. I think that God prepared an engineer from South Texas. Oh, and my brother, who is also an engineer, he lives in Southern Oregon, to launch this. I think he has prepared us for this. And if he hasn't, then it won't have any issue. If it does, it's because the Lord has willed it. I grew up on a ranch called the Big O Ranch in Laredo, Texas, about 50 miles as the crow flies from the Lazy G Ranch, which is where Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder, used to spend his summers as a kid. I went to a boys' classical day school from 4th grade to 12th grade, and so I got a really good education, not as good as a lot of homeschoolers get, but certainly the best that was available in our area. Learned Latin and logic and rhetoric and the great books and debate. And then on the ranch, I raised cattle, and I was an engineer and formed classical schools and all that stuff you talked about. But as I was doing all of those things, I really had a wake-up call. And this is what you asked me about, Rebecca. On 9/11, that morning, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I guess a lot of us do. Here I was, an engineer, I'd done structural analysis and design for decades. And I'm watching the screen and I'm seeing three examples, the first three examples in history of an axial implosion, free fall velocity, pulverizing, pyroclastic collapse of a steel high-rise structure. Never happened before in history. All the steel high-rise structure failures in history, there had never been one like that, except in every controlled demolition. So I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, fire-induced collapse? I don't think so. And right there, I just knew the gloves were off, kind of a George Orwell moment, a nightmare. And I'm thinking, wow, what is happening here? I've got 6 grandkids. This is, no, we're not, government can't be doing this. I really freaked out. For weeks, I was in a strange, mental position and spiritual. And as I prayed about it and thought about it, I ended up taking years looking into that, along with thousands of engineers and architects. We formed a deal called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. A lot of people, a lot of, physicists, material science people, structural engineers, a lot of people just said, no, this impossible. So, but then I had to say, okay, so what do we do about it? And I finally ended up just basically praying, God, how did we get here? How can we fix this? Where do we go to fix this? And I took some time off, had some money put away, and took a 14-month hiatus from my practice. I ended up closing my practice, and I just holed up in a little RV, bought a little old trailer and put it in the Texas Hill Country under a big giant oak tree. And my wife stayed down in Laredo while I studied 110 books and countless founding documents, countless websites. And I just kept digging, making notes, digging. I collected fellow volunteers. I hitched up with other people and finally defined the threat. We said, okay, what is the actual threat to the average American, to our future? Define the threat and then work the solution, just like an engineering forensics problem. And so over the past 8 years since that time, actually since I started this project in late 2007, so for 8 years since that time, with 23 other volunteers at AmericaAgain, we've invested well over 25,000 hours in R&D. And I think we have the only full spectrum action plan, actual solution, long-term solution in the country. And this, I feel, is by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God, because we were not fit for this kind of work. So we discovered, and by the way, we're co-founders are one guy, one of us is a former U.S. Secret Service agent, 2 of us are engineers, One is a Fortune 500 tech manager, and one is a lifetime, recently retired certified financial planner with a background in Wall Street and banking. We all discovered that, if you're going to apply a solution to whatever you think is America's plight, and we thought we had found it, then you have to know what the real problem is. If you're not going after the real problem, obviously, you're never going to find the real solution. So our problem, contrary to what everybody's playing around with, is not politics. Politics is not a solution to crime. Corruption is a non-actionable weasel word. If you just say corruption, that's not good enough. There are when I told you earlier about America Again, the movie, it's a 1-hour compendium of 7 actionable felony crimes being committed every day by the U.S. Congress. That's serious. So we're the victim of at least 5 generations of organized crime. So if you watch that movie, America Again, the movie, on the website there, you're going to start getting probably pretty upset and wonder how we've not been taught, why we didn't know these things. So the thing is to just go ahead and internalize it. And my book, Fear the People, walks you one step at a time into first knowledge and then repentance and then action, so that you're not just whining about it and thinking, wow, we'll never fix this. We will fix it. God willing and providing, we will. But first you have to repent what you're doing and thinking and fix that and then get to work. And that's what we're all about. It's get people getting to work. So our enemy is Washington, D.C. It's the most ruthless, lawless, powerful city-state on earth. Don't make any bones about that. Don't go visit there to worship there. It's preposterous what people do with that city. And its victim is America and a good portion of the world, obviously. So the thing is, the politicians, if we think, the politicians are our enemy. No, they're not the key players. They're just the lapdogs of our real domestic enemy, which is organized crime of every stripe. I mean, every kind of organized crime. And I'm not blowing conspiracy theory smoke here. I mean, this is well established. If you go back, we'll start. Marine Corps General Smedley Butler was the most highly decorated officer in U.S. Marine Corps history. He first described this Washington, D.C. organized crime in a 1935 book called War is a Racket. You may have heard of that one, Rebecca. It's really kind of a little booklet. I think it's about 40 pages long or something, but got a bunch of pictures in it. And in that book, he actually talks about racketeering. Actual racketeering, the companies, the banks, the defense contractors, the sugar growers, the people that actually hired the U.S. Marine Corps to do their dirty work. I mean, Smedley Butler, this Marine Corps general, is saying, hey, guys, look what I did. I did this for 40 years and I'm really sorry, but I have to tell you how this is. And he didn't want us getting into the next European war, which he failed at that. But anyway, 25 years later, in 1961, another general, this time 5-star Army general, who is now president, Dwight Eisenhower, the last day he's in office, in his farewell address, he coined the term military-industrial complex. You probably remember that.
Yeah, and you hear that now.
And in that expose, in that tell-all, right when he's leaving office, I guess because he thought he might get killed for saying it or so, who knows. But he reiterated exactly what General Butler had said 25 years earlier. The military, banking, and oil industries are holding us hostage. They're going to destroy this country. They need to be stopped. Again, we didn't listen. We didn't take action. We didn't take these guys seriously. So then in 69, there was a criminologist named Donald Cressy. He traveled the country giving speeches and stuff about a big book that he wrote, about almost 400 pages, called Theft of the Nation. And I bought a copy. I found a used copy of it. And it's a comprehensive indictment of Washington, D.C., organized crime. Now, this is a criminologist. This isn't just a Marine Corps or Army general saying, hey, they're crooked, they're crooked. No, this is a guy laying it out for you, telling you where the bodies are buried, and telling you how organized crime operates Washington, D.C. So in Theft of the Nation in 1969, this is laid out before us. Again, we did nothing. That book, I don't know how many it sold, but it never made much of a splash that I heard of. And dozens of authors have done this. They've written books about how crooked DC is, It doesn't seem to matter. The last one is a really good book called Organized Crime, The Unvarnished Truth About Government. And that's by Professor Thomas DiLorenzo. I think he's at Loyola University. And I think it's a 2012 or a 2013 book. I have it in Kindle, and it comes in paperback also. It's a very good book, Organized Crime, The Unvarnished Truth About Government. He just walks you chapter by chapter through the huge felony crimes being committed by Washington, D.C. So it's not like we don't know the actual criminal activity. Now, this is the highest crime you can get. These are some of them $1 trillion crimes. This is really big crime. Okay, so we have a crime problem. The problem is organized crime. Now we know that. It's not politics, okay? So the solution can't be politics. You're not going to solve crime by politics, okay? And you don't solve it by running away, right? So secession, people that want to secede, like, boy, here in Texas, a lot of people talk about it. I think it's dumb. It's tactically very dumb for one state to pull out, because then they're all going to turn against you, and we're all just going to be a bigger mess. But also nullification, what does that do? Nullification is when a state legislature says, nanny, nanny, boo, boo, we're not going to obey you. Well, number one, the states are a higher constitutional authority than the federal government. The states were the party to the Constitution. The federal government was the creature of the Constitution. So when you nullify, when you come around the backside of a crime and you try to nullify it by saying, I won't do anything, you're going to be doing that until the cows come home. You'll never finish nullifying. That's no way for a sovereign to handle a really bratty servant or a lawless servant. Also, taking to the streets with firearms. And a lot of my buddies, they think that's the answer. They cite the Second Amendment. Look, before we talk about rights to bear arms, let's talk about your duty to bear arms. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. It's the only duty we give ourselves in the Constitution, is the duty to, quote, execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, unquote. So we have a duty, and our duty is, forget this thing about what barrel length or what magazine size or what kind of weapons you can. Look, if you're arguing with your completely lawless servants over what kind of firearms you can carry, and you don't even think about training or mustering or doing what you're supposed to do with the rest of the people in your town all the time, then you're nuts. You're way off the reservation. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and that's kind of one of the challenges that I think that your organization would have. I think you've said a few things that's probably sent the hairs on the back of the necks of some of our listeners straight up. How are you getting your message across to be able to, if there's a small percentage that doesn't believe this, how do you get all the people to start believing what you're saying so that you can turn it back?
Okay, well, the first thing is, if you look at history, go back and listen to the griping of Socrates or listen to the griping of Plato. You're going to hear that most people they're inert, they're ignorant, and they're apathetic. They don't care. So it's always going to be the case, Rebecca, that most people in every area of the world, in every time, are going to be relatively inert.
Well, they defend the leaders like it's a king. I mean, we all have our favorite political party. When you say this isn't a political thing, until we get people to realize that it's all of the parties, all of it, it's a very corrupt thing. I mean, people feel it. There are so many polls that show that there's only like maybe 10% that actually think we're headed in the right way. Whereas, the rest of the nation can feel something's wrong. But what you're saying, I think sometimes people would just, like you said, that's conspiratorial type talk.
Yeah, it is. But like I was saying, most people are going to just not get it because most people throughout history in all human societies have just not gotten it. And they don't need to get it because most of the work is usually done by a very small percentage of the population in every society. So,
well, the American Revolution happened with only a small population.
They say there's a meme that there were only 3% or whatever, but it is a very small percentage. And what we say with our mechanism, which I'll get to in a minute, it's called the AmericaAgain indictment engine, and it requires far less than 0.5% of the people to be involved. Law enforcement is not a popularity contest, and it's not majoritarian, so you don't worry about most people getting it or liking what you're doing or whatever. You just do it because it's the right thing to do and it has to be done. It's like, let's say you're in a small town and you have a police force of 2. And you say, wow, most of the people aren't for us. And yeah, but when somebody's speeding or raping or breaking into a store, you still stop them, right? You don't say, well, we can't do it because most of the people aren't with us.
Yeah.
So you have to just know, you have to grow up and say, okay, if I am one of we the people, that collective, we're the highest level of government. I teach that in the first chapter of the book. On pages 11 and 12, I show you all of the words that we use that we never should have used. Things like voter, elected leader, nation. That's a dumb word to use for us. Anyway, democracy, grassroots. They're words that we use that have turned us into kind of brain dead, in civics. We don't know which is up and which is down. So if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, and I say that my buddies in the Second Amendment movement don't know what they're trying to accomplish.
I think that's the scary thing that I'm kind of in a panic over going, okay, this sounds like it could get very violent. When you have people that don't know what they're doing, they're going to automatically defend, the status quo of what's going on. They're going to see us as the domestic terrorist or whatever they've labeled a lot of those people as.
But if you're using the law and you use it shrewdly, and you do this, well, let me finish. And then when you look at the book, Fear the People, I walk you slowly through first taking off the old man, the unregenerate American that doesn't want to read history. And I bring history in kind of soft, kind of easy. And you see the things that you haven't learned about civics and you go, oh, wow. Oh, hey, cool. And pretty soon you've got a whole wall around you and you're going, all right, now I can do some stuff. Yeah, because, well, you're also going to have some friends around you. And so we're doing this as an action organization. If you don't ever take action and you just sit around and talk about these things, nothing will ever change. But if you never grow to critical mass, you can't take action. Because small, tiny groups can't do. Look at the Bundy, what I call Bundy jumping, the Bundy Ranch things. It's terrible. It just goes from bad to worse when you take these little groups and go try in one little part of the country to go make some point or another. It's absurd.
Yeah, you end up arrested and in jail.
Yeah, and in prison forever. And the thing is, every town should have its own militia. Read the Constitution. We should have never stopped doing that, but we did. Okay, so the solution can't be, like I say, it really can't be the Second Amendment. Not yet, not right now. It really can't. And it can't be secession because all you're going to do is have everybody else chase you around. It can't be nullification because that'll never end. Okay, and it can't be, by the way, this Pandora's box of a con-con. People that want another constitutional convention to rewrite the Constitution, just think. Just think about it, guys. If they already violate the existing Constitution as good as it is, DC organized crime will continue to violate any amended Constitution that you make. So I don't know what people are thinking about having a con-con is going to help anything. Look at the Tea Party. Look at the Ron Paul Revolution. All of these are political nostrums. They're political pabulum. They said, okay, if we can get enough good people in, look at the 2010 election. Look at the 2012, 2014. You can put in all the, constitutional conservatives you want. You're putting them into the most corrupt, ruthless city-state, organized crime racket in the world.
Well, and some of our politicians have even recognized that, and they do feel stuck. I think
they are stuck. Yeah. They are stuck. When you get there, the first thing you do, the first time you go, let's say you're a freshman, and let's forget the senators for a minute. Let's say you're a freshman congressman. The first time you go out to dinner or breakfast or anything with anybody, you're going to go with senior staffer that's been there way longer than you, and he or she is probably older than you, and they know all the ropes. And you're probably going to go with one or two or whatever lobbyists or lobbyist lawyers, and they're often the same thing. And you might get invited to something with a big shot on your side of the aisle. So that big shot will kind of be watching you and listening to you as you learn. And the others will tell you how things work. They'll just tell you how things work to see if you're going to play. And if you don't play, you're never going to serve on committees. You're never going to get anything. So no matter how big your heart is about changing DC, you're going to get woodshedded, and you're either going to play the game or you're out.
Yeah.
You're just going to be silly.
Well, and Senator Massey said that if he doesn't pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars to his political party, they basically take away any right for you to serve on those committees too. So he's
committee. You buy committee slots. So, and people don't understand too that when you say, where do federal laws come from? Who writes them? And people, the legislature. No, they don't. They do not. They sponsor them. That doesn't mean they write them. The K Street law firms write them. And who are they writing them for? Well, their clients. And who are their clients? Industry. How long has this gone on? Since Lincoln was in the White House. Really? Oh, yeah. Just ask people that have lived there and worked there. That's how things work. So you say, well, can we write laws too? Yeah, we can. We can write laws. And now go try to get somebody, if you can write a reform law, go try to get somebody to sponsor it for you. You won't. Why? Because the people that pay get that. So see, when you're talking about organized crime, you're locked into a system that's never going to change until we do what I'm going to talk about now.
Yeah, let's move into that. That seems a lot more.
Into the solution. Yeah.
Positive.
So, the solution now, is law enforcement. Okay, so what does this look like? All right. At the state level first, we have three major goals. AmericaAgain has three major goals, and it has to start at the state level first. Okay, so the first one is we get 27 more state legislatures to ratify the original First Amendment. That's the first article in our original Bill of Rights. If you go look at the parchment Bill of Rights, the actual original, and you can find it online anywhere, just do parchment Bill of Rights and it'll come right up. And zoom in and look at it, and you'll see, oh, wow, it's got 12 articles, not 10. I always heard the Bill of Rights was 10. No, it was 12. So in that September of 1789, when the Congress moved to amend the Constitution for the first time, it moved and took action on 12 articles, not 10. Then it sent them off to the states. And in order for an amendment to be ratified, it needed 3/4 of the states. So there had to be 12 states ratifying. Well, the first right in our Bill of Rights was the one I'm going to talk about. And it was only voted for, supposedly, by 11, not 12 states. Now, the 12th actually did, in 1790, ratify it. That was Connecticut, but Connecticut blew it. They did not record their ratification vote because the House and Senate had a spat. And so they decided not to send their results to D.C. So it showed that only 11 states, so that first right in our Bill of Rights just kind of sat there. And it's been 227 years just sitting there waiting to be ratified. Okay, that's the first thing. We're going to ratify that first, and I'll talk a little more about it in a minute. The second and third things we have to do at the state level is first to get our state legislatures to pass our proposed law restoring the local militia in every town. And then second, restoring the 640 million acres of DC occupied territory. And that's mostly in the western states, but restoring that back to the state itself. The states have to reclaim that land and everything on that land because it belongs and always has belonged to the state, not to the federal government.
Yeah, once we gained statehood, that was illegal for the federal government to keep that land.
That's correct. And I'm sure Chris-Ann Hall talked about that because she talks about that a lot. And I'm totally in lockstep with Chris-Ann. When you read the property clause in Article 4, I think it's Article 4, Section 2, Clause 2, or Clause 3, but they call it the property clause. And when you read that, it's talking about the property that belongs to the United States. Well, that property we define in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. There's only two kinds of property that the U.S. government can own and control. A 10 by 10 mile square called D.C., and any land that they purchase from any one of the state legislatures with the legislature's consent. They have to purchase it for a military base. Anything else out there that right now is called a possession or a national park or BLM lands or anything else, that's illegal. They can't do that. They never could. National monument, all of these lands, it's illegal. Now, only the states can make that claim. If you go look at Article 4, at that same property clause, and I think it's Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 is what it is. At the end of that section, it says, any claims of the United States or of any particular state, notwithstanding. So if any particular state makes a claim and says, this is our land, always has been, that's it. You're done, U.S. government. If you're sitting there squatting on that land and you've got expensive buildings built and all kinds of federal vehicles, those all belong to the state. The state can claim those anytime it wants. It has a claim, and the claim is constitutional. Now, will the states have that kind of a spine? I don't know, but we have a model law for them to pass, and we'll see if they're going to take it.
Before we go on, let's listen to this message. Changing a paradigm takes some study, but like me, you are probably super busy. That's why we've teamed up with Audible. Go to our website, theluminousmind.net. Get a free month of Audible with 2 audiobooks, thousands of titles in exchange for only books that you absolutely love. You too can be learning on the go to keep that fire burning. Mind with David Zuniga as we discuss rebuilding America again.
So anyway, see how this works? Once we ratify that original First Amendment, though, let me talk about that. You know why it's the first article in the original Parchment Bill of Rights?
Why?
Because it was the most important one to them at that time. And you know that because the only issue that George Washington ever stood up in the Constitutional Convention of 1787, the only thing he stood up to talk about it publicly, in plenary session, was apportioned representation. What happened was on that last day, Nathaniel Gorham, he said, hey, this Article 1, Section 2, Clause 4 says 40,000 people per district. That's too many. It's too large. And he brought it to Washington, and that was the only thing George Washington stood to talk about. And he did, and I describe this on page 5 of my book from Madison's notes of the convention. And Madison describes how George Washington stood up and he said, I haven't seen fit to speak before this, but this is true. This is too large a district. 40,000 was too large. Do you know we have districts of 750,000 today? It's absurd. So that was very important. That's why they made it the first of our Bill of Rights. And it's sitting there. Rebecca, we can do this right now. Congress can't stop us. We just get 27 more states to vote, and that's it. We got it. Now, here's why it's so important. And I tell people, all right, so they say, yeah, how many seats would we have in the House? 6,400. Whoa, no, crazy. No. Can't do that. All right, but watch. Of all our state level actions, if you read my book, Fear the People, in chapter 12, I walk you through the 22 reform laws by which over the next, say, 2 decades, we take back everything we've lost to DC organized crime. Everything. But of those 22, the first one is called the Bring Congress Home Act. And it's modeled after a 2013 law that was tried, resolution called the 2013 Mobile Act by Congressman Eric Swalwell, he's a Democrat of California, and Steve Pierce, he's a Republican of New Mexico. They said, hey guys, we live way back west. Every week we've got to fly back home. We've got all this extra cost and time, and we're just tired, and this is crazy. Why do we do this when 40% of American companies are using telepresence? I mean, why can't we, So they proposed this Mobile Act, and right away, the DC organization, there's all of these law firms and all of these lobbyist firms, and they immediately shut that down. But imagine if we pass the Bring Congress Home Act. Okay, well, let me tell you what it.
I can see how that would help. I mean, they're at least here, puts them back with the people. We're back.
They're back among the people. But watch, it's more than that, Rebecca, because they are the people. Watch. Okay, you've got to have only one modest office, all right, and it's got to be in your district. You can only have a staff of 2 if you're a congressman. If your district is now 1/15 the size of today's, your salary will be 1/2 of what it is today. They make about 180 today. They would make about 90,000. And you'd be limited to 2 terms. Oh, and you'd get no benefits because we don't want lifelong careerists. We don't, if you can only serve 2 terms, 4 years, you don't want to give the people benefits and stuff. They're going to want to stay. So all of the things that you would do if you said, okay, I'm running this business, I'm the owner, they're the people that work for me, which they are, and you say, I'm going to set the terms of their employment. They can't set them, right? What other business do you know of? Anything do you know of that the employees get to set everything?
Yeah.
They say, this is how we're going to office. This is how big our staff's going to be. I mean, no, you can't run things that way. So the Bring Congress Home Act is just saying, all right, just like Swalwell and Pierce said in 2013, it's time to come into the 21st century. We're going to have them do telepresence. We're going to have them stay home. So what if there's 6,400 of them? Do you know how many people we have serving the same 320 million Americans in our state legislatures? 7,383.
Wow.
Is anybody saying, oh, we have too many in our state? No, we're not. We're not saying it's too many. It would still be more than the 6,400 we'd have in the U.S. House. Why is it too many for the federal government? And yet we've got more than that at our state government. We're not complaining about that. So when you take them out of D.C., bring them where we can watch them, you can get to their office. Anybody can walk or drive to their office because the districts are going to be very small now. This is what George Washington and the rest of the founding fathers always had in mind. The person has to be responsive and truly have apportioned representation. And it's time to do this. We have the tech to do this now. So again, once we do that, think of how that changes everything. Think of how you, Rebecca, could run for the U.S. House and have a really good shot of winning. It wouldn't take so much money. You wouldn't have these big, huge, heavy hitters coming in and running against you. How could they do that for 6,400 seats? We will see what they're doing because it's all local stuff. It's local advertising. It's local. I mean, we see it because it's happening right under our nose.
Yeah. What's the next part of the plan then after bringing DC home?
Okay, so after bringing DC home, the next one, and I won't go into all 22, but I'll just tell you the next one because it's really cool. The second one of the 22 is called the Constitutional Courts Act. And that is, it has 2 aspects to it. Number one, and I cover this on page 22. Page 22. All right. If you look at Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution, after what I tell you right now, you are going to freak out because we never had to have the whole Roe v. Wade war. We never had to have the wars over all these, this whole thing about marriage, the whole thing about Obamacare. None of these things was necessary. You know why? Because look at what Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2 says. What it says, essentially, is we gave Congress. Remember, the Constitution is written in our name. It's us talking to our servants. So we say that Congress will have the power over the U.S. Supreme Court to make whatever regulations and reservations it wants on the U.S. Supreme Court. That is in the Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2. So if tomorrow Congress passed the law that we have called the Constitutional Courts Act, they will say that number one, abortion, euthanasia, anything having to do with marriage or sexual practices, Sharia law or other foreign law, and health care, all of those are outside the subject matter jurisdiction of the federal courts. Now, Congress can do that on its own today. It has the power. Go read the Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2. We gave them the power way back 227 years ago. Now, have you heard any congressman talking about this? I haven't.
No.
Not one. I've heard Edwin Vieira, my mentor and incredible man that he is, Dr. Edwin Vieira, talk about it. He has a book called How to Dethrone the Imperial Judiciary, a paperback book, excellent book. One of the things he talks about is that. So we could stop all of this tomorrow and keep the courts out. When they talk about oh, these activist courts, those activist courts are the fault of Congress. That's why Article 1, the first article of our Constitution, has to do with Congress, because Congress has the power of the purse and of the sword and of the courts,
Yeah.
which you read in Article 3, Section 1. If you go to Article 3, which has to do with the judiciary, and you go to Section 1, you see, oh, wow, all the federal courts belong to Congress? Yeah, we told them, and whatever other courts that Congress shall create. So Congress can close all the inferior federal courts tomorrow. They have complete control over them. So when you hear these guys making these silly, false pretenses about, oh, these federal judges, it's Congress's fault. Now, if Congress is doing all this evil, whose fault is that?
Well, ours, because we're allowing it, right?
Yeah, because we're at the top of so that's why in chapter 1 of the book, and again in chapter 2, I kind of reiterate it. If you read Fear the People, that book is meant to teach you the civics we never learned in school or college or grad school or law school. And after you learn that stuff, now you have to live it. You have to practice it,
Yeah. Well, you said there's 22 points, right, in your book of how
Yes.
to get this back. And so we've just talked about 3, and we're running out of time. But
Yeah, and that's why I said I won't go over all. Go to chapter 12 of the book, and there they are, all 22 of them. And again, there are many, many things. There's much work to be done, but we've got to focus.
Yeah.
And so right now, what I like people to do is go look at all the good stuff we're going to get. Okay, whoa, cool. Now, let's go to the one thing we have to do or nothing else is going to happen. And now let's focus on that one thing, guys. If we don't focus on the one thing, we're not going to get any of them done. Okay, so that's why I don't like to show the whole panoply unless you open the book and read it. Just download the book. It's free.
And I will have a link on my show notes for that. One of the questions that I do wonder, though, is how you get all the people that are living off the government. I mean, we have basically half the population living off of it, either through a substance or healthcare or education, that get some sort of perk from the government. How do we make this happen without it being so violent? Or the power, they're going to hang on to the power that they have,
Right.
and
Right.
they don't allow this to just turn over and just going to walk away.
Sure. Yeah. And the ones that I think of, because I'm 61 years old, I think of the people that say, I paid in all my life. I paid in. And so I should certainly, if I need Medicare, if I need if I want to collect Social Security, I paid in, right? I guess what I say to that is we're not going to have the choices that you think we're going to have. And I mean very soon. Very soon, we are not going to have those choices. On page, I think it's 31 of the book, Fear the People, I make this case to people like me who are getting close to being able to take that money back out. And you say, look, if somebody stole everything you had out of your house while you were gone, and that happened a week ago, and now today you see them at your neighbor's house, rifling through the house and taking all the same stuff that they took from you. Because let's say your neighbor loved your taste so much that he and they copied everything you had. I mean, they had all the same stuff and you say, well, look, I'm just going to go to their van and take all the stuff that looks just like mine because, hey, I paid in. No, you were ripped off. Yeah. If you're 70 years old today, guess what? Your money is so long gone, it was long gone 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You were ripped off. Now you can say, but I can't live without Social Security. I can't. Do you have kids? Do you have, brothers and sisters? Do you have anyone that lives around? Do you go to a church? Do you have anyone to help you? Because guess what? This system is going down.
Yeah.
It's going to collapse. If you go look at the current debt chart, there is no way it's going to just go on forever this way. There's $170 trillion of unfunded liabilities right now. There's $19 trillion with the meter running of debt right now, straight debt. If you get into the whole liabilities in the banking sector, forget it. That includes derivatives and everything. You're talking about quadrillions, over 550 trillion just in the 5 top U.S. banks. This whole thing is coming down fairly soon, folks. You need to at least know everyone should have some kind of an idea of what they have to do to live and to get by when things get really, really ugly, because they will. Now, that's the price of living the way we've lived and not caring enough to do something. Now, no matter whose fault it is, when it happens, you still have to have a way out of the other side. The last time we had a Great Depression, it was very hard for 6 or 7 years and still upside down for almost 10 years. This time it probably won't go that long, but it'll be much bloodier and much tougher. And so you still have to say, do we have a plan to come out of the other side better than we went in? Yes, we do. That's what this book is all about. Chapter 4 specifically is about that very thing. What happens when the wheels come off? What are we going to do? And I talk about the money, restoring money, and I talk about the debt and all of that, and how we come out on the other side much, much better than we've been in the last century. So actually, it has the potential of being very cathartic and the best time in 150 years. But you still have to know we are going to pay a price. One way or another, all of us are going to pay a price.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from you, I guess, is that it's better to have a plan in mind and to be educating each other and to be preparing for it versus just sticking our head in the sand thinking we can go
and
on
saying,
forever.
well, yeah, somebody will take care of it. And trust me, government will have a plan. They will have a plan. And you can also trust me to say, just look at the past. Their plan will make things worse.
Yeah.
It'll be one of those that you look at and say, okay, great, anything, because you're panicked and there's hundreds of millions of people panicking. So they'll pretty much take anything. Watch out. When that happens, just watch out. That's why I say, this is for a remnant who will raise the red flag and say, look, guys, here it is. It's hard work. It's tough at first, but look how well we come out on the other side.
Yeah.
We get everything back during that period of time. We do a reset. It's hard, guys. It's hard. Talk to your my grandparents used to talk to us about the Depression and what it did and how it reset their mind and how it just happens. Guys, I mean, we've lived crazy for a long time. Okay, do you know that right now in sub-Saharan Africa, 78% of the people there have cell phone service? Okay, imagine that.
Wow.
Barefoot African herdsman, with his stick poking the cows and walking around barefoot. But he can get tomorrow's weather. He can learn English. And because he's learning English, he can now find medical diagnoses for the kind of maladies that used to kill his parents and siblings and things. But here we are, okay, in this supposedly most developed civilization in history, and we're letting organized crime run our lives and operate Congress by 19th century, archaic, easily hidden, easily corrupted procedures. It's ludicrous. We can't do this forever.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it is coming down. It's just a matter of, are we willing to educate ourselves and prepare for it versus...
And to get ready. And to get ready. So we're trying to grow our membership, Rebecca, as fast as we can. We're calling on folks, look, just join, and that'll get your town on the map. We're looking at the 31,000 American towns that have population under 10,000. The small towns of America is where I believe this will begin, because this is where the values, the norms and nobility of what America used to be still reside, in small town America. Once the 4 people that we're trying to get 4 people per town. And once you do, you don't feel like you're all alone. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not the only person in town that knows this stuff. And you say, all right, what do we do next? We want you to get, and we've got all this stuff. We want you to get, we give you the sign-up sheet. Get 10 people to sign this sign-up sheet for the first 3 actions that I've already talked about. And when you do that, you're now getting 40 people in a small town to stand up and say, okay, we're reading a book. We're getting smart. We know who you are. We know what you've done wrong. This is ongoing crime. It's going to stop. And we're standing up. And so you just, town by town by town, we want 25. Our first stop is 2,500 towns by next March, 5,000 towns by March of 2018. That's not many compared to 31,000 small towns, but 5,000 towns, it's a lot.
Yeah,
so
it makes a big difference in the end.
It will. It'll make a huge difference. And the thing we need to remember is that if things are making people very stressed out and wow, this is terrible, and this is Obama started all of this, and people think, oh no, and now Bernie Sanders. My point here, Obama and even Bernie Sanders, they are nothing new. They are the kicking, screaming, tragic caricature of the end of American communism. And let me tell you, we don't learn that. I went to an all-boys private school, very expensive school. I never learned this stuff. In chapter 4, like I told you, of Fear the People, it's called American Idol, and I talk about Lincoln. And in that chapter, I have links to 6 books and to 1 website that completely expose Abe Lincoln. Now, Abe Lincoln was an admirer and a pen pal of Karl Marx. And Karl Marx was the star foreign correspondent for Horace Greeley's newspaper, the New York Tribune. And of course, back then, Marxism, nobody knew Marxism was going to fail and be horrible. They thought, oh, wow, this is new and great and all that. But even to homeschools today, they don't teach this fact of history. Abe Lincoln was a Marxist. In fact, before Abe Lincoln, the first GOP presidential candidate, John Fremont, he was a Marxist, open, very, back then to be a Marxist was cool. So, and Abe Lincoln's most of the generals in the Northern Army were Marxists. So when you don't know a simple fact like that of history, that Lincoln and Marx were bosom buddies and stuff. And when you don't know, do you know that since Woodrow Wilson's administration, 8 of the 10 planks of Marx's 1848 manifesto have been federal policy?
Yeah, I've seen that before.
For a century.
You go through each one of those marks, and each one of them are here already.
Yeah, we're here and have been since Wilson was president. So when people think it's Obama and oh no, Bernie Sanders wants to take us into hey guys,
socialism. Yeah,
we've been communist, as defined by Marx for a century.
Yeah.
So our schools, even private schools, even most homeschool curricula, and I know because I've done all of these, they don't teach these important facts. They don't. We've been functionally communist for a century. So if you wonder why everything's going to fall down around our heads, because Marx was wrong. That's why.
Yeah. Well, and that is, it's failed policies that we're seeing, and we are seeing a lot of people grasping for more. And like you said, if we turn to the government, their plan is to take us even further in
they'll offer you more.
So
they'll offer you more, and it'll be, a dollar that'll fall so fast, a false, counterfeit dollar, a Fed dollar that'll fall so fast, it'll make the Weimar Bundesmark or whatever look strong by comparison. Yeah. But if you notice what happened to us during Lincoln's time, if you knew, if we lived through a time like that, we would understand why Americans got so, it was shock and awe. During Lincoln's time, think about a 4-year period of time, 750,000 people dying. That's like 7.5 million dying today. Can you imagine 7.5 million Americans dying in a domestic war right now?
Well, no.
Half of the 65% of all assessed property value in the South was destroyed in 4 years. Can you imagine 65% of all the property in half of this republic getting destroyed in 4 years? Can you imagine what that would do?
It would be chaos for sure.
Well, it would be chaos, and you'd be very, very fearful of that power that was doing that. So we became that shock and awe transformation. Our servants became our masters. We went from being sovereign, the people and the states, being sovereign over the Constitution, to being the serfs. And so it got worse and worse to where now 1% of the top 1% are the ones that run, because they, believe me, they make multi-generational plans for their grandkids to rule over your grandkids.
Yeah.
And that they've always done that. That's what the rich have always. So if you think it's all is lost, it's not. I say in both of my books, I wrote a book back in 2010 called This Bloodless Liberty. And this one also, in both those books, I say this is potentially the best time in 200 years of our history.
Wow.
But we have work to do.
Yeah. Well, before we say goodbye, I've taken so much of your time already this afternoon. Would you mind giving us maybe some final words and how we can get in touch with you? How we can find more information about your books and then also be part of this America Again?
Sure. Thank you. go to AmericaAgain.net. There's a lot on that site. Watch the videos first. That's probably the easiest way in. All the videos are on the homepage there, so just look for any of the videos, click on them, watch them. The 1-hour video is extremely good for homeschooled kids and parents. A lot of history in there you won't believe, and it really fits together. You can call me. I'm at 830-445-9137. That's my personal line. You can write to me at david.zuniga, Zuniga, at AmericaAgain.net. You can also text me at that number I gave you. But again, get in touch one way or another. And if you go to our website, up on the top it says About, the top menu. In the About menu, there are a bunch of submenus, and the best one in there to start with is the FAQ page, Frequently Asked Questions. There's a lot in there to learn. So start there and then go over to the blog. Also on the top menu, it says blog. Click on that. A lot of blog articles, interesting stuff you never heard before. It's all true. And thank you very much, Rebecca, for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I know your network is growing because in the last 3 weeks, I've had numerous people get a hold of me and tell me that I needed to have David on with us. And I'm like, he's already coming. So I really appreciate your time and for helping us light our minds on fire. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about David Zuniga and rebuilding America again, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and get our new monthly newsletter. Then check out our services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of inspiring content, go to the sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us, leave us a review, share our content. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.